Hello, beautiful. I'm your host, Nicole Goff. Welcome to the Ecstatic Life podcast, the podcast for women who want it all: health, wealth, freedom, authenticity, love, beauty, all of the hidden gems just waiting to be uncovered. This is the podcast for women who are ready to discover their inner creatrix, to discover their inner manifester, and who want to find the ecstatic in every day. Hi, and welcome back to the Ecstatic Life podcast. Today, I am here with my good friend, Marcy Neumann. Hi, Marcy.
Hey, Nicole. So happy to be
Welcome.
here.
I am so glad to have you. All right. So Marcy is a master level teacher, certified in Usui Reiki, Karuna Reiki, and creator of self-actualization Love Reiki. She is an energy specialist and a visionary. Known as the Heart Shift Coach, she is an intuitive life coach and mentor. She is also a spiritualist minister, an RN, and certified hypnotherapist. She specializes in past life regression. Marcy is also a published author. She is creator of award-winning manifestation products. She is a TV host of Live with Marcy and Amy, the Heart-Centered Woman. She is podcast host of the High Vibe Tribe, host and creator of Parenting in an Upside Down World, and founder of selfloveuniversity.com. She's a sought-after speaker, teacher, and collaborative partner for other thought leaders worldwide, and has for over 50 years experience leading people to heal their hearts and create self-love lifestyles for fulfillment, health, and success. Woo! That was quite an intro. You have done a lot in your life, and that intro says it right there. Whew.
Yeah.
Wow. So welcome. So to let everybody know, Marcy and I have a history. She has been a teacher for my community school, my co-op, a loved member, and we have also worked on some other podcasting projects together. So I am so happy. As soon as I decided to start this podcast, I was like, of course I'm going to invite Marcy on. So I am so happy to have you here now. And so I wanted to ask you, first off, we are here to talk about self-love.
Yes.
So how can self-love make your life more ecstatic?
Great question. And I think first, it's important to really differentiate like what we're talking about. So when I talk about self-love, and by the way, I started to really focus in my work about 25 years ago, completely on self-love, because it was so evident to me that so many of the issues that people were experiencing, whether it was physical or mental or emotional, had a spiritual basis to them. And it was all sort of revolving around this lack of self-love. And in fact, so many cases I would find that there was this almost like deep sense of unworthiness, and the extreme being like self-loathing or self-hatred, and people just not understanding how essential it was to really start to love themselves. But I found that people got so confused, and especially in the past maybe 5 or 10 years, where self-love is sort of getting tossed around in lots of different genres and platforms and everything. So first I want to just sort of differentiate, what is self-love? Self-love is actually your journey. It's your personal journey of self-actualization. And so from my perspective, that self-actualization is an actualization that you are a divine creator. So that's my entire orientation. Now, what happens is that for a lot of people, they get confused because they say, well, I love myself. I went for a pedicure, I went for a massage, I this, I that. And so it's important for people to know that as lovely and wonderful as that is, that is self-care. Now, self-care can be anything from putting a hat on if it's raining outside or cold, right? Wearing a jacket, carrying an umbrella, and yes, includes going for that pedicure, or that massage, or having coffee with your friend. It's anything that soothes you, it comforts you, it makes your life better in the sense that it comforts you, right? That's self-care. Self-love is on the opposite end of that spectrum. There is nothing comfortable about it because
Hmm.
self-love takes you out of your comfort zone. Why? Because that journey of self-actualization requires that you let go of all of that conditioning and programming from either your families or societies, your communities that have kept you small and afraid to reach for what it is that you want and need so that you're fully expressing who you are. When we remember that the ultimate goal is to be that expression, that self actualized expression of a divine self, in most cases, that's quite a winding road. Okay. There is no
Yeah.
straight path. And so, what we learn about self love is that every step along the way, I'm actually having God bumps as I'm talking about it. We learn things that do help to soothe our path, but they're not physical things. They are things like learning how to be compassionate to ourselves, learning how to be tender, how to forgive ourselves for, those instances where we start to beat ourselves up. We think, oh, I'm such an idiot. What did I do that for? I could have been so much better. I could have done this. So there's a great deal of acceptance. And I actually talk about radical acceptance that, yes, we are these divine creators, but we're also having a very human experience. And we have to love ourselves every step along the way because being human is messy. There is
Yeah.
nothing that, is a given. We are constantly being bombarded, number one, by the expectations of others. And in most cases, doesn't even come close to the expectations that we have of ourselves, right? We've been so programmed to be such perfectionists and to forget that our human experience is just as important as our divine experience.
Yeah.
They're interwoven. And through them both, as we integrate them, especially, then we really start to expand and be such a greater expression of self. So now that I've talked your ear off with that, I hope people can, you can see I'm so passionate about this.
Ah,
I hope
yes,
that people
obviously.
can really understand self love is your inner journey to self actualization as a divine being. And it is powerful. It's when you start to learn that that power is inside of you and that you no longer need to acquiesce that power to appease others. So you can
Hmm.
see why it takes you out of that comfort zone, right?
Yes. Yes, that is such a different interpretation than I think you see on the surface level. Because the last interview I did was with someone who specializes in self-care. And so you do kind of conflate the two. So to get that really deeper perspective, that really deeper understanding, yeah, that
Yeah.
was really beautiful.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering what brought you on this journey? Because most of us we come to these places after having, the journey ourselves, experiencing the hardship and moving through it. So how did you come to be on this self-love journey yourself?
Yeah. I mean, you're so right on. And again, I want to emphasize before I go into this, every step along the way, you are going to be asked, are you in alignment with your heart? Are you in alignment with your spirit? And
Mm.
so, Nicole, I had become so good, I mean, masterful at creating this life in this world that was living up to everybody else's expectations, trying to make life better for them, trying to be everything they wanted and needed me to be. And in the process, I forgot who I was. And
Mm.
so, one of the things that I didn't mention in the bio is that back in 1974, when I graduated from nursing school, I was also ordained as a spiritualist minister. I was trained in hands on healing, mediumship, channeling, and what we now know as energy medicine. And so my entire, early career was really as a liaison between conventional medicine and metaphysical medicine. And what happened was I got married, I had kids, we're building this life, building this whole world. And for my husband, what was really important was also this facade of perfection. And so
Ah.
I needed to walk a very narrow path in order to fulfill that. And so I started to put all of these parts of me that were actually the most important parts of me because they were connected to my heart and my spirit on the back burner. And so whenever they would leak out, I put a band aid on, quiet that voice a little bit, right? But in the meantime, I continued with getting Reiki certifications, all the certifications that we spoke about in my bio, but it was still on the down low. And everybody in my world sort of looked at me as this, crazy person or, just would laugh, kind of pat me on the head. Oh, okay, Marcy, you're a little bit eccentric,
Energy
yeah,
work.
exactly. And yeah, I learned to live like that, right? And then I'll tell you what happened. I was approaching 50 and I started to recognize I was physically like falling apart. I had headaches almost constantly, never left the house without Advil or something, constant digestive issues. I couldn't eat anything without my stomach just becoming like a rock. I would lay in bed at night and actually whimper out of fear that I would wake my husband because the pain in my hips was so extreme that I couldn't go to sleep. And so here we were on this family vacation out in Montana. And we were actually there for a wedding celebration of my niece. And I've always had this really strong affinity for the Native American. And so we're at a party, and I look out into the backyard. Here's this, authentic teepee. Well, there was no way I could ignore that. And so the moment it was possible, I snuck out of the party and I went into the backyard and I went into the teepee. And the minute I got in, I started to have this cosmic experience and I pulled back the ceiling flaps. And it was almost like the whole night sky just started to flood the teepee. And I decided to lay down on the rugs that were there and just take it in for a moment. And at the time, we were also there celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary. And so all my kids were there, and it was just such a great time, right? And I'm lying there thinking, oh my God, you have the most idyllic life. Everybody's envy, this and that, had anything any money could buy, everything, right? And I'm lying there and I'm making this very lengthy gratitude list. And all of a sudden, like a ticker tape across my mind's eye. It says, how much longer do I have to do this, Lord?
Oh,
I bolted upright. I broke out into a sweat, and I jumped out of the teepee and I vomited in the bushes.
wow.
And in that moment, I remember thinking, oh my God, I was filled with this sense of dread. And then I had such guilt and such shame. Like, who was I to ask for more? I had everything. And so, of course, I started to beat myself up. And then the entire weekend, I couldn't let anybody look me in the eye. I was so afraid that they were going to see this, ungrateful biatch, right? I thought that they could see it because it was filling me constantly. And so I remember going home and thinking, okay, I can't live like this. So I did what I was really good at. I tried to sweep it under the rug, just ignore it, jump right back into my life, right? Do all the things that I normally do. Now, mind you, at the time, I've got a lot of band aids on that, true, authentic self of mine. I had started a not for profit organization for Reiki practitioners. I was, vegetarian. I said I was a card carrying PTA member. Like all these little pieces that I had put together, thinking that it would just be okay. But there's something that happens when you've had that spiritual breakthrough the way that I did. It's almost like a gauntlet has been thrown, and it's like, time's up. And that's exactly the way it was. And like, whenever those experiences happen, I mean, it's truly transformational. Everything falls apart. It has to, because you must answer this call. And the more that goes by where you're not answering, you're not really responding to it, it just gets bigger and bigger because you're trying to bury it. So it's actually getting all of your energy, it's getting your focus because you have to keep hiding it. And so, nearly to the day, 1 year later, I was telling my husband that I wanted a divorce. I had gone in the meantime to start working with this woman who specialized in women in transition. And what was so interesting, Nicole, and I know you're going to appreciate this, but I had been given this woman's name and number a year before from a psychic, and I just threw it in my drawer. I said, well, what do I need this for? I'm not in transition. But I took it out.
Wow.
There it was in my drawer, and in a very short amount of time, it was very evident that I was so unhappy in my life and I was so unhappy in my marriage. And so it required that I answer that question. And what happened was, I actually had approached my husband about going for counseling. Um, I would say to him often, forget not being on the same page. We're not in the same chapter. And then we weren't even in the same book anymore.
Yeah.
And so he refused, absolutely refused to go until I remember I finally came to this place where I gave him an ultimatum. And he just laughed. He just laughed. And I had made an appointment for us to see a marriage counselor. And I walked in and he said, I see you're all alone, Marcy. And he said, how do you feel? And I said, I feel like an elephant has just lifted off my chest. I can breathe.
Hmm.
And so, to make a long story short, my now verbalizing that I was no longer in this marriage, there was no way it was going to work for me. It was almost as if the universe laid itself at my feet. It is when everything started then to flow through me. And so I had moved into my own home with my youngest son. And I remember one day I was sitting at my desk and the doorbell rings, and I jumped out of my seat to go answer the door. And I'm standing at the door, and all of a sudden, I'm flooded with this realization. I just jumped out of my chair with no pain. Then it was, oh my God, I haven't had a headache. I haven't had any digestive issues. And when I was married, I used to have these, what I would say were recurrent nightmares. And I would always wake up in a sweat and I would tear the bed or my nightstand apart because I couldn't find my wedding ring. And what was pointed out to me when I was working with this woman was that was not a recurrent nightmare. It's called a panic attack. And in that moment, standing now at the door, I realized I hadn't had even one of those since I had left my marital home. And so, of course, I eventually closed the door and I'm just standing there and thinking to myself, what is it? Like, what did I do? What has changed? And the thought comes in immediately. You started to love yourself in a way that you never
Mm.
allowed yourself to before.
Yes.
Well, let me tell you something, Nicole. At that point, I was on fire because now I got it. And so I realized it was just so amazing how the knowingness comes to you, right? You get into that frequency and it's like all this information starts flooding. And I had this realization that number one, not only had I healed myself of all of these physical issues, but I was so happy. I was so joyous. And like I said, all this information was pouring through me. And that's when an entire series of products was given to me. These were law of attraction products, like training wheels for people to learn those principles.
Like your
I
vision
didn't
board.
have any background in business. I didn't have any, experience in product development or packaging or anything. And as incredulous as it seems, in 6 months, I had 8 products on the market and started winning awards for them as best new products on the market. And all of
Hmm.
these things started to come through me. And every single bit of it was evidence that when I put my spirit in charge, when I put my heart in charge, and it got to the point where that would be the only question I would ask myself: does this feed my spirit? Do I feel free when I'm doing this? That's it. Do I feel free? That's how I made all my decisions. And I have to say, I've never looked back. And
Wow.
life has
That's a
continued to just lay itself at my feet.
Yeah, that's incredible. I've never, I've known you for a couple of years now and I'd never heard that whole story. So that's really beautiful to hear all that. I mean, it
Yeah.
is. And there's the little whisper that we ignore and we
Mm-hmm.
ignore it and we ignore it. Like you said, putting band-aids on top of things. And then it turns into an insistent poke and then a yell and then your whole body is screaming at you and it's like you yes, wake up. And at some
Yeah.
point you can't ignore it anymore,
No, you can't.
then I completely resonate with that story because
Yeah.
very very similar path to where I am. And
Yeah,
I think a lot of women can. I think that's why a lot of us get into this work, wanting to help other women.
absolutely.
Yeah, because we do have that arc. And yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that story with us.
Yeah. It's my
Whew.
honor and my greatest joy. I mean, this is what I do all the time, right? Because one thing that I've come to recognize is when we're in the flow of that joy, you talk about an ecstatic life. It's not even anything that we can imagine until we give ourselves permission to be free for it to be expressed through us. We keep thinking that we're creating, we have to do this and this and this, we have to have these goals and all of that. That's not how women create. Women
Mm-mm.
create through their second chakra, right? It's where our babies are developed, and it's how we give birth. It's all here. And so when what happens is when, oh, I got God bumps again. When we start to allow our heart to lead us, it feeds that fertile ground where all things are created. So whether you're a writer or a singer or a podcaster or this, it's actually created in that second chakra, but it needs to be fed from the heart first. And then also what's in its path, the solar plexus, it's our will, it's our willingness to feed that new creation. So that's why women are always like, oh, we just know something's going on, down there. If our gut is, out of sync or whatever, honey, that's us trying to create. And it's not getting the energy that it needs because most people believe that self care might get them there. No, self care might help to open yourself to you, but the real work is in letting go of everything that is preventing you from living that full expression of the love that you are. And I'm not talking about daily stresses, we all have them, right? But when you come into this frequency, and I do see it actually as a vibrational frequency, when we tap into that energy, what happens is we now have access to different information that's in this higher vibrational frequency that can now help us to troubleshoot all of those daily issues that pull us in so many different directions. We see things differently because we give ourselves permission to feel it differently. So rather than feeling it in a contracted state and being stressed out, when we move into the vibrational frequency of self love, we now can feel it and perceive it differently and say, oh, I can do something differently about that. And that's where we get
Yeah.
into that ecstasy because we're totally free. And whether we realize it or not, we're not happy until we feel free because
Yeah.
freedom,
Well,
and I don't mean free, I mean free to express our authentic being, which means we are allowing ourselves to love and be loved, to give and receive in partnerships constantly, because that's how energy needs to flow in and out, in and out, and to follow our joy, right? To follow our bliss. Joseph Campbell tried to tell us follow your bliss, follow your bliss, follow your bliss, right? It's true. Follow your bliss.
yeah. Yeah. And so what I hear you describing is heart led. And
Absolutely.
so you have the show the heart centered woman. So I would love to hear a definition of that. What is a
Yeah.
heart-centered woman, and how do you lead with your heart? What are some simple things that a woman could do?
What fabulous questions you have, Nicole. You're so good at this. Do you know you're the only person who has ever asked me that? We've had that show for 4 years. You're the only person who has ever asked me that. Such a great question. So, a heart centered woman is a woman who radically accepts herself as representative of the divine feminine, number one.
Yes.
And that we must move out of the man's world and the man's way of doing things. And as we radically accept ourselves as the divine feminine, we must step into how a woman creates. It's so funny. Just before we came on together, I'm creating this new program, and it's called the 3 A's of Ascension. And so it's awaken, it is accept, and align. And it's from the viewpoint of the divine feminine, right? We're actually awakening within us that divine energy that we have come here to express, to share. We've been hearing for years, right? The women are going to heal the world, the women are going to be the leaders of this. Well, how do we get there? And this is it. This is what self love is all about. It's why it's so essential to really put your focus into following that path every step along the way. Ah, is this feeding my heart, or do I feel like I'm in freaking prison? Yeah. Yeah, it's really clear. You'll be able to answer that. Yeah. And if I'm in prison, can I get one foot out? Can I put one arm out between those bars? What can I do? That's self love, because self loathing will say, I'm a victim. I'm in, eternal prison, and I'm here and I'm here and I have to do this and have to do that. That's all ego based thought and the opposite of what the heart would tell you. So, one of the things I do when I'm working with my clients, and I think it's so important, is I help them to discern the voice of the ego as opposed to the voice of the higher self, right? That divine feminine. And it's so clear, it's so easy once you get the hang of it. And that is this: the ego will always tell you, back off. Remember what happened last time you tried that? It will always tell you that, because remember, its biggest fear, number one, is that you remember who you are, this divine feminine creator of the world. But also, it comes from that 4-year-old within you that's afraid to come out from behind the couch. It might get, punished for something, for wanting too much, right? That was how my ego used to speak to me. And so when we start to recognize that voice and all of the distractions that it produces and the smoke screens and all of that, becomes real easy to then, like, just turn our hearts into a different direction and just, say, what do you have to tell me? Well, your heart, 100% of the time, knows that you're here to experience the world. You're here to just be an expression of love, whatever it is, whatever way you want to do that. No judgment, no conditions on that. Just go for it. That's what you're here for. And so it'll always say, follow me, follow me. And it'll remind you, be courageous, be bold, take a chance. The ego's saying, no, no, don't do that. Don't take a risk. No, your higher self will say, go for it, girl. Do it. Be it. That's what it's about.
It sounds so easy, but we know that's so hard.
But it's
Oh,
like
it's
anything
it's so
else,
brave.
Nicole. You have to keep at it, right? You have to keep
Yes.
practicing it. And I'm going to tell you right now, at this point in my life, it's all about creating self-love lifestyle. Okay? You might not hit the mark each and every time, but if your intention is to stay in that frequency as much as possible, I know for myself, when I'm out of it now, it's like nails on a blackboard. It's like,
Mm.
like get myself back in there as much as possible and as fast as possible because it's so uncomfortable for me. There was a time I could never have this conversation with you. Never. There was a time that you wouldn't have been on that side of the microphone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to believe. I've only known you the last couple of years, and
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to see the Marcy who had to control herself and hide in this little box that her
Yeah.
husband made for her. It's hard for me to imagine that,
Yeah.
Marcy, knowing you as you are now.
It's hard for me. I don't even remember that life. Every once in a while, I get a little glimpse. It's like, wow, it is just so incredible to me that I'm literally, and this goes for any other woman that, who is also now living a self love lifestyle. It is this precious opportunity to live life in the same body, but in a completely different world. And it has nothing
Yes.
to do with my love for my family, for my friends, for this, for that. It has everything to do with what I've come to understand is actually my obligation. I believe that we come here with these agreements. And the agreement is always about coming into the greatest version of ourselves possible. And so
And your
I,
body knows that too. Your
uh-huh,
body knows that too. That's why your body was screaming at
that's
you, because
right.
we know these bodies were made to be inhabited by that soul version of us, that higher version of us that is screaming to get out. So
Yeah,
yes, our bodies tell us, they're here to give us those signals.
everything. It tells us
Yes.
everything we need to know. And so, yeah, I mean, there just is no question in my mind, like how essential this is for people to really, and I don't want to use the word learn. We already know how to do it, but we do have to cultivate the courage because it takes a lot of courage to step outside of the norm, to step outside of what we have been programmed to do, which for women is to make other people happy.
Yeah. Yeah, and to do that is scary because you feel like you're going to lose everything, community, support. I mean, it's yeah, that's a very scary place for a woman to be. I know for me on my journey, it did start with the self-care. The self-love started with the self-care, just simple things.
Yeah.
The very first thing was, I'm going to take a bath by myself with no children. As you know, I have 5 of them,
Yes.
with no children in the bubble bath with me.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
would lock the bathroom door for half
Mm-hmm.
hour, and I would just have alone time every day. So just carving out that one little
That's
thing
right.
opened it up. But we're so trained to martyr, to give, to
Oh,
give, to
yeah.
give to our husbands, to our children, to our community, to our family.
Yeah.
And we forget. We forget about
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. We forget about
Yeah.
loving ourselves. And at the end of the day, we feel used up and we feel
Oh,
resentful. Yeah. And
honey,
yeah, we do. We're
you
going around
got
being
it.
bitches.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
so true. Yeah. I mean, I remember it was during the time that I'd started that not-for-profit organization, and the only day that we could have meetings because everybody had kids and everything was on a Sunday afternoon. And my husband would howl that I was neglecting the family, and I would be tortured for stepping outside of the home. for something for myself. And, that place of making certain that you are giving yourself self-care does open the possibilities to going that next step. Well, what else would my heart want, right? What else would my heart want? And the most amazing thing is, and you talked about, people being afraid, right? Of course, I was so freaking scared. Um, and I will tell you right now, you probably will lose people. You will lose relationships. When I left my home, my marriage, my friends, my family, my job, my community, my everything that had defined me for almost 30 years. And you see who is in your world that is willing to love you for who you are. So, number one, you're giving yourself the opportunity to actually be loved, not used, not, you know, um, great at making them happy, right? But number two, when you see how the people around you are incapable of allowing you to bloom in the way that you're meant to bloom, it also brings a lot of clarity. And yes, it's painful because you say, why couldn't they? If they really loved me, they would do that for me. They would allow this. They would, and that's not the way it works. It has nothing to do with love. It has to do with everybody trying to get their needs met and looking to other people to meet them. So, one of the things about self love is really becoming spiritually accountable to ourselves. And by the way, I have a wonderful course on Self Love University about spiritual accountability and taking you through those steps. But that's also another thing that we're programmed not to do. We're always programmed to point that finger outwards, right? Everybody else's fault, I know you can relate. So it brings us back to ourselves when we start to recognize the power that is actually in that, becoming accountable to ourselves and saying, oh, and I'm still worthy. Oh, I'm still lovable. Oh, I'm still just as smart as I was, or I'm still this, or I'm still that. And then you actually get to discover more things about yourself because they were attached to the parts that you thought you had to keep hidden. So it is the most incredible metamorphosis that occurs when we really endeavor.
And those who fall away, or those things about us, those parts of us that fall away, were probably not serving us. They were probably not our true self, our highest self. They were probably not people who loved us for who we are, but for that shell that we had created, or for
The
the things
facade.
that we were doing for them. The
Yeah,
yes. So really, it serves us, even though it's scary. It is so scary to
it's
let
so
go,
scary.
and I found that to be a very difficult lesson in the
Mm-hmm.
last few years.
Yeah,
The act of letting go can be
yeah,
so hard.
it
Yeah.
sure is. Yeah, it's not, I always say it's not for the weak of heart, but it is for the strong of spirit. And the universe will make certain then that your life is filled with people who now appreciate you, who can see what you bring to the table is completely unique and not to be matched anywhere else, and how, you deserve to be loved and cherished. This is what we're all meant to be experiencing, to be loved and cherished and appreciated, and to do the same, to love someone else in that same way. But if you're so busy hiding behind that facade, you also are not available to love anybody, because the
Yeah.
parts of you that are compassionate and tender and forgiving and can go with the flow and be flexible instead of, with this tunnel vision, those parts of you are now released. They're out of prison. And now you can love the way you were meant to love.
Yeah. Well, so you have a free program that's the essentials of self-love. So what would you say to someone who's really in it? They haven't begun this journey yet, and they're still in I guess the opposite of that would be self-betrayal, right? So they're
It's
still deep in the
self-betrayal is a
self-betrayal.
huge part of it. Self-betrayal is a huge part of it. Yeah. Yep. So,
Yeah, so what would
go ahead.
I was going to say, just what would you say to that woman who you can see is ready to crack open that shell? How would you
Yeah.
tell her to start?
I would tell her to go to heartshiftcoach.com, and there is a free ebook, and the name of it is How to Shift from Self-Sabotage to Self-Love in 5 Days. You can also
Wow.
find it at marcyneumann.com. It's a fabulous book, and it's precisely for this, for the people who just need to awaken a bit, to come to that understanding that you can differentiate between self sabotage and self love, and you can begin right here and right now to cultivate that courage, to follow your heart, to live that heart centered life, and to be everything that you came here to be. It's already within you. You just have to, you know, get on the other side of those prison bars.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love how you say it like that. I mean, it's a self-imposed prison in our own
Mm-hmm.
bodies, you know? And that's the way it feels too. Because when you're in that state, as you said, you're having backaches and headaches. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
everything hurts. You know, these physical symptoms, you're caged by your body. Your body is rattling your bones, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so it is when you free yourself, when you free your heart, you free your body.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, one of the things that I tell women. It's like to start with one thing, like I
One
did with the
thing.
one thing, just
Yeah.
one thing, and then it's contagious. Once
Mm-hmm.
you get that one thing, it's like,
Yeah.
wow, it opens you up. But that
Yeah.
first step, you just have to take that
Yeah.
first step. Yeah.
Stick that foot out between those bars. See
Yeah.
what it feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what would make my life so much more ecstatic? If you would like, subscribe, share, comment, review, or rate this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. It would really mean the world to me, and it helps the algorithm know that this show is important and it needs to get out to other women who are also trying to make their lives ecstatic too. And if you want to support me further, I have a Patreon, patreon.com/Nicole Goff Speaks, where I have a $5 a month membership, and you get access to special recordings that are too hot for the mainstream channels. Thank you so much for your support, and I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Ecstatic Life podcast. So I to bring this in another direction,
Yeah.
I had some questions about Reiki.
Oh, yeah.
So first off, I was wondering if you could define Reiki for those who are not familiar with it. And I would like to know what you mean by being an energy specialist, because it
Yeah.
seems like this was the foundation before you opened up and you set yourself free. Even this was kind of brewing in there that whole time. This energy work. So if you could talk to us a little bit about what that means to you, what that has done for you, I would really appreciate that.
Again, best interview ever. Best questions. I love you, Nicole. All right. I'm putting this up on my website. This is honestly, you just have the
Oh,
greatest questions. Yeah.
Well, I will say I did kind of learn from you, right? So
But
that, and this has been a heart calling of
superb.
mine. My heart was very much led in this direction. And so I feel
I'm
very
honored
called to
for
this.
that opportunity.
Oh,
But yeah, you're awesome.
thank you. That brought a tear to my eye.
Yeah, you're just awesome. You're natural. So, okay. So, when I was trained as a spiritualist minister, again, think about this 1974. Um, that's this year, it'll be 51 years since I was ordained. Trained in hands on healing, mediumship, channeling, and energy medicine. How do we heal? As you can imagine, there was a handful of people I could talk to, right? So, other than our little enclave, actually, it wasn't so little, but where I was, it was little. I don't know if any of our audience is familiar with Lilydale, but it's up in Western New York. It's where the church was that um, I was associated with and ordained through. But anyway, um, so as the years went by and I started to be invited to create all of these programs for conventional medicine, for conventional organizations, like I was asked to develop a program for uh, brain injured adults. And what was the focus of it? Teaching them how to love themselves again, with all of their injuries and disabilities. Uh,
So that
I
was
was
before you had discovered the self love, before you received the download about self love. You were
probably
already
the
teaching
same
others.
time, just about the same time. Because what happened was part of that program, and also I had started the not for profit organization, and we were going into the hospital settings, giving Reiki to the doctors and nurses and anesthesiologists. And, it was amazing. But anyway, so what had happened was after I left my marriage and I'd moved into my own home and I had started to get all those downloads for the products, I also was given this download for this health, bleh, self-help health and wellness program, which is the Self Love, CELL, small p, capital H, pronounced self. And it was so like mind blowing. Okay. But what happened was now I had already become a Reiki master, an Asui Reiki master, and a Karuna Reiki master. And what finally came into that forefront of my mind was that this self-love process needed to be integrated with Reiki. What is Reiki? Reiki is the universal energy of love. So when you become a Reiki practitioner, excuse me, what you're doing is you're becoming a channel for that particular frequency of energy. You're not using any energy of your own. So, I had become, master teacher levels for both of those, two completely different frequencies that I was very aware of. And then when self love came along, I realized, okay, this is asking me to integrate it with that universal energy of love, but the frequency was different. I could feel it different. And the feeling for me was like I had a trillion hearts. And this is so perfect for your ecstatic life. Like I had a trillion hearts inside of me that were exploding. That's the way it felt.
Wow.
I felt every cell come alive. And so I then developed a self love Reiki program, which I've now been teaching for about 20 years. And by the way, anybody interested, I'm teaching it every single month this year. It's part of my renewed focus for 2025. So, um, that energy, again, it's the discernment of the frequencies. And I can give you a perfect example. How does it feel when you wake up in the morning and you are thinking about um, the fact that you have to clean your house from top to bottom? What does it feel like?
A drag.
Okay, a drag. What else?
Yeah, energetically a drag. Like,
Right. So what just happened? All of your energy started to go down. So if I were to ask you where you're feeling that most in your body, where would it be?
it would probably be like shoulders, upper back, kind of slumping, tension, like weight on your shoulders.
You got it. Weight of the world on your shoulders. Now, I want you to think about all the things that you would rather be doing than cleaning your house. What? Okay.
Yeah.
But now go back to the fact that you can't do any of those because you have to clean your house. What happens?
Well, I guess honestly, it kind of put it in a different perspective because what shifted for me was I thought, well, I can do those things and have the clean house and I'll feel good about doing those things. So
Okay.
it didn't make me feel as bad.
Okay. So what you had was a little glimmer of light injected. And immediately what happened? What happened to the weight that you were feeling?
It lifted.
It lifted.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just had a heart shift. What actually happened? That's how fast it can happen, Nicole. You had a heart shift. You recalibrated the energy that was affecting your heart. So you first had this dense energy, this feeling of being imprisoned, all the weight of the cleaning of the house on your shoulders. And then I asked, well, what if? What are some of the things that you'd rather be doing? Immediately you got a smile on your face. You started to laugh, and the energy of your heart shifted. That's why
Yeah.
I'm right. So, this is a heart shift, and this is part of what we are constantly looking to do to recalibrate the energy. And that's what is so essential to the self love Reiki program. But it's how we become more and more aware that we are energy beings. Everything is affecting us. You meet somebody at a party, for instance, and you walk up and the hair on the back of your neck stands up. It's like, whoa, oh, excuse me, I can know the ladies' room. Doesn't matter how many people are around them, laughing and having a great time. If you are listening to your energy, you're going to remove yourself. So, this is how we start to live life differently. We live life now from the gift that it is, and we now become a gift to it. Because rather than feeling imprisoned in that weight of energy on your shoulders, you can go out and feel joyful and happy. And all of that has a domino effect out into the world.
So in your work as a heart shift coach, are you
Yeah.
integrating the Reiki? Are you integrating channeling the energy into the clients that you work with?
Oh, yeah. I teach them how to heart shift using the process of self love that I've created and how that integration creates their happiness and health. So it is in constant motion, constant integration. Not all of my clients become Reiki, but so many of them understand that every time we enter into the energy field with um, an intention, right, to raise our vibrational frequency, something like a Reiki course takes you from like 0 to 100 in about 30 seconds. It just goes and you're out of the contracted state that you've been living in and into this brand new awareness that you can communicate on every single level because everything is
Mm.
energy. So the more that you
Yeah.
get to be sensitive towards it, the easier it is that, you get to navigate through life differently.
I love the work that you did with the kids in the homeschool group with my kids. I loved the work how you brought Reiki down to their level and did hands-on experiments and
Yeah.
activities with them that they could integrate and understand.
Yeah.
I thought that was really a beautiful lesson for those kids, and they definitely hold very fond memories of those classes.
But imagine how blessed they are to have parents like you, right? Who understand that they are energy beings. And so the earlier that we can start to adopt those practices in our kids' lives, they get to live longer lives of true empowerment. They will be less likely to acquiesce their power to anyone else. They will be able to stand strong. And as you know, this was the focus of what I developed there to build their confidence by knowing themselves, truly knowing themselves. And yeah, thank you so much for those kind words because of course it's my hope that they will take it out into their lives as long as they live them and just remember that they are energy beings and are powerful creators and becoming
Yes.
more and more energy sensitive each day.
Yes, and it's our mission to be able to help these kids
Yeah,
to be living fully in themselves, in their authenticity, so that they
that's
don't
right.
have to be like me and like you and like
Mhm.
most of the other people in the world who, well, I guess I should say many don't ever find that breakthrough. Many
Yeah,
don't ever get those downloads, don't ever break free from their cages. But even for those who do, it's how much is lost. And so it's really one of my biggest missions in life to help create a world or at least a community that supports kids in
yeah,
living in their authenticity so they never have to deal with those same struggles.
exactly. And I just want to say, for all of those who are responsible for our upbringing, that they certainly did the very best that they could. And, it was based on the information that they had. And so what we know is that, well, first off, compared to like when I was first getting my training, the critical mass, right, has increased exponentially of people who have awoken to their own energy and a level of consciousness where they're starting to realize they can make different choices. They can live differently. You're a perfect example of that. So I think as more and more of us are out there in the world, um, living our best lives, living our best timelines, as I say, really choosing to be that greatest expression of self, look at the impact that we are having wherever we go. You're doing a
Yes. I'm
beautiful
so glad you
job,
brought that
Nicole.
up. Oh, thank you. I'm so glad you brought that up too, because I have definitely noticed a paradigm shift recently. Even in, so the last guest that I had on, she talked about embodying the divine feminine and what that
Mm-hmm.
meant to her. And, I see a lot of women now talking about this. There has been this big shift, this big awakening. And 5 years ago, I didn't see anyone. And I don't think it was because I was in different circles. I think it was because it wasn't in the collective consciousness.
Right.
And now it has been freed into the collective consciousness, and everyone is soaking up this knowledge. And I feel a shift. I feel a heart shift for the planet, and it makes
There
me
you
really
go.
excited.
I mean, the truth of the matter is, in terms of the collective, if we look at the collective as a representative of, the source energy, the, divine creative energy, it was always there. I think we need to take credit that we've been willing to put the time and energy and the hard work into raising our vibrational frequency so that we can reach those higher realms and access the information that's there waiting for us.
Yeah, yeah, because we are literally antennas
That's right.
for that source energy, for that source
Mm-hmm.
information,
Yeah,
and yeah, if we have broken, rusty, bent antennas that we're not taking care of, we're not able to channel that. And I definitely know that when I was not taking care of myself, I
mm-hmm.
was not getting the messages and the downloads that I get
That's
now.
right.
And yeah, it's pretty amazing. Well,
Yeah,
we have reached our hour,
I
but
know.
I I want to ask you if there's anything else that you would like that we haven't covered, that we haven't touched on, that you would like to share. And I definitely want to know before you go if you have any upcoming workshops or offerings. I'd like to know how people can get in touch with you if they'd like to work with you.
Yeah. So, um, the one thing that I want everyone to know is that everything inside of you is simply waiting to be let out, let free. And that I promise you that the moment that you do that, the universe, just as it did for me, and now I've worked with thousands of people all around the world, I've witnessed it time and time and time again. The universe is going to meet you right where you are and make certain that you have everything that you need to get to where you're meant to go. It's going to take some trust. But one of the things that I often talk about is that trust is actually a temporary necessity. Once you take that
Hmm.
first step and you go over that threshold, the universe, like, and when I tell you it's going to lay itself at your feet, it's going to lay itself at your feet, and you will have all the evidence that you possibly could need that you have taken the step that's in alignment with your heart and your higher soul. Okay? And so know that the trust that often people, have trepidations about, oh, I have such trouble with trusting, I can't trust. Just for a moment. Trust just for a moment. And then you won't need it anymore. It's like
Yeah.
that it's like that lifesaver thing, right? That they throw out when you're, you know, drowning, you're about to drown, and you just need to hold on, let it pull you up on the boat. Then you don't need it anymore. You don't go around wearing it, but you can trust that it's going to get you from where you are to where you need to be so that the universe can really take you to that place where your love is safe to be given and received.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that first step. That first
Mm-hmm.
step off the ledge is so scary.
That's right. That's right. And as far
Yeah.
as workshops, I have so much stuff going on this year. I just felt so blessed. I was just like bombarded with all of these incredible opportunities. I have loads of workshops coming up. Like I said, I'm teaching self love Reiki, and I'm doing it in a weekend to be both Saturday and Sunday. Um, and at the end on Sunday, you actually have 4 certifications. So you have two certifications. You'll be certified in the Sui Reiki, which is the most popular, right, form of Reiki. You see it in hospitals and all over, and you'll be certified as a practitioner. And then you will have two certifications, level 1 and 2 for self love Reiki. And we'll be able to share that then with your clients. So you'll be immediately able to just go out, put your shingle up, and start making really good money. So that's number one. I have a class coming up on forgiveness. I have a class coming up on, oh my gosh, I've forgotten. Oh, every Thursday, I'm at the Sound Awake studio in Newberry, and it is navigating your ascension journey. So, we're going to be discussing all of these aspects that I spoke about before, your own awakening, your own
And that's an
acceptance.
in-person
That's in person or
offering.
live
So
stream.
if you're in North Central Florida, that's an in-person offering. Ah,
Yep.
nice.
All of these, everything I do, you can attend either live streamed or live. I always do that.
Awesome.
Yep, and that includes the Reiki programs. The other thing is that I don't know. I just have so many things coming up. It's hard for me to even remember.
Are they all
Also,
on your
so blessed.
website?
Uh, they will all be on my website. My calendar is just getting updated. And last year, I was so blessed to have been filmed for this documentary, and it's called the Clickety Clack, navigating the clickety clack of life. And this year, they've decided to break it up into a 7-part made for television series, and the launch party is on March 12th. I'll make certain that you get an invitation. And
Definitely.
it is with three of the main people from The Secret, Joe Vitale, Dr. John DeMartini, and Maria Diamond. And yeah, so we talk about how to maintain your peace in this crazy world. And like I said, they've broken it up
Yes.
into 7 segments, and it's going to be on, I think they're starting out on Tubi. Yeah, that television platform. And, of course, the hopes that it'll be picked up and taken with wings to wherever it's meant to go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been such a pleasure. I always love talking to you,
I
and
know,
it's
Nicole. I
been
love you so much. Thank you so
I
much for
love you
having
too,
me as a
Marcy.
guest.
Yes, I'm so glad you could be one of my first guests. Ah, my heart to you. I
I
really
know.
appreciate
See
it.
what I'm
Is there
talking
anything else
about?
you
Your heart is singing to you. You know you're in the right
Yes.
place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this conversation has been beautiful. Thank you so much.
My pleasure and my greatest joy. So thank you so much for having me, and I hope to see you soon.